Um, yes, now, so let's say I've entered in. There is significant changes in the exchange rate, then some kind of percentage will be applied. And especially in the times where exchange rate volatilities was more or less on the rise, these provisions were indeed made. So if you want to be part of a particular contractual engagement, looking at the external factors which you do not have control over, you should price accordingly. Or engage the buyer to put in such clauses so that you are protected. If that is not done, then of course you are bound to lose. So if you want to be part of that competition, you can ask for that. Others may leave it because that will be just a drop in the ocean for them, as far as that particular amount involved is concerned. So you should be mindful as an entity of what kind of contractual agreements you actually engage in. If they are unwilling to have such clauses, then you may want to advise yourself as an entity of what you should do. Yeah. And if I don't know if you get my point.
Yes, Doc.
So there are various types of contracts. Okay, and one of them is this. The others, which are lump sum and co, we will come to that. But this is just indeed, the foundational bits that we are talking about. Lump sum, you finish supply, they pay you your lump sum immediately. Okay, and so those aspects are also, are well considered in contract. So you can write that, okay, you have delayed for so and so months, and it has affected me by such. Okay, and then you seek redress with the entity concerned. Okay, Gabriela.
Yeah, Doc, please, I'll talk about the principles of contract management. So, it has to be a transparency something. All process and decisions should be open and clear to each of the parties. And then each party must also take responsibilities for their duties and actions. And then all parties should also be treated equally without favoritism.
Okay. What else? All parties should not be. Hello, Jude.
Yes, hello, Doc. Thank you. So I think a lot has been said. I heard of elements of contracts or sort of characteristics. I had offer, acceptance, and then the capacity, which is the intention. I wanted to add a consideration that in contracts, something of value that is exchanged between the parties. So let's say there's supposed to be something of value like money, goods, or service. So that is a consideration. Then my other colleague spoke of the types of contracts. He spoke of the written, the verbal, and then the implied, which is basically formed by the actions and conduct of the parties. So let's say a practical example, a supplier supplied items, maybe he's supposed to give you rice, maybe 100 bags of rice, and then they delivered 200. The buying agency also received the 200 and then used all the 200. Now, on the contract, on the written agreements, it is 100 bags of rice they are supposed to bring, but they brought 200. And the buying agency also took the 200 and consumed it. So in this case, is that what we mean by the implied? Once you have consumed the rice, it means you've accepted to, let's say, make payment for all the 200. Or in this case, they will say they asked for 100, so we are not paying for 200. So that's the question I wanted.
So why do you use if you know you won't pay?
Look, sometimes it happens. So
You know that you can't pay or you won't pay, but you use. What kind of confusion is that? Because I mean, once you have decided that, sometimes you just have to. You look at the differential and then you pay the difference. Yes, and depending on the previous contract that you've already had, there can be what we call extensions. Okay, and you see all these things, it has to be, characterized by some documentation. Okay, you don't just use anything, or you don't just supply without any documentations and all those things. So that is why it is important that we follow through with the procedures so that everyone is on the same wavelength. It's very important. Once everyone is on the same wavelength, you realize that nobody is shortchanged. Okay, nobody is shortchanged, and everything goes on as smoothly as possible. So, I mean, some of these things can be adequately curtailed. All right. Okay, maybe we can take the last. Yes.
Doc, Frank.
Yes, Frank.
Doc, one thing I can say is that you don't have to go in for a contract with duress. You might not be forced before you can go into a contract. Other than that, at the end of the day, you can regret it. Hello, Doc.
Yes, we are listening. Okay.
Yeah, because somebody wants something from you, and you think that you cannot give to that person. You are not. You have to tell him pen blank that I cannot do that. Other than that, at the end of the day, you regret for signing that contract, because contract is a binding document. At the end of the day, if they should send you to court, definitely you will lose. So you don't have to go in for contract on the duress. That's what I can say, Doc.
Okay. That's also well said. So, yes, Tony, you have a question?
Doc, is about the principles that Gravella brought in. Well, when we talk of principle, we are looking at the fundamental rule or a guideline that governs how contracts should be handled to ensure they deliver the intended value and outcomes. So what Mr. Silfi just said about not being an duress, it will fall under mutual agreement. So mutual agreement will be one of the principles of a contract, which means that all terms must be willingly agreed upon by all parties. So no one should be forced or misled into signing. So for every contract, we need to follow this fundamental rule to ensure that nobody is exploited. And also, one of the principles is that there should be clarity. All terms, obligations, timelines, and penalties must be clearly stated and understood by all parties. So this will avoid any kind of ambiguity that will lead to disputes among the parties who are involved. So for every contract, they have to follow these key principles. There are a lot, but I can only mention just the two. Thank you very much, Doc.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Amina, you have something to add? It's 5. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So I would also like to talk about when giving contracts to people, you don't just give it to anybody. There are certain things you need to look into before you contract with someone. So some of the things are financial stability. It's a very important key. You check into their financial history, how they are doing, and then you also look into their capacity and scalability. As you can visit their facility if possible, and then you check whether whatever they say they have, it's not like they are not now going to source the things from somewhere. You check into their buffer, whether they can supply at any given time when you make demands. You also need to look into their pricing. The price that they bring on the table, will it be good for you? If it's good, you go into that contract with them. And also geographical and logistics risks. So you look into that too, as well as how they uh, comply to ethical and compliance standards. It's also very, very important, as well as you also look into their track records before giving out any contract to them. They should also have a very good responsive and communication skills to reach them. Reaching them for any business or maybe any other supplies you make or any other clarification on whatever they supply. It's also very, very important to be able to reach them, to have a quality business with them. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Amina, I think that maybe you have the last word. Or anybody having the last word? Richard Hubo, you want to have the last word? Or Rosita?
Yeah, Doc.
Yes. Have the last
Okay,
word. What did you find?
boss, Doc, let's look at this one too. Every contract has to be under lawful purpose. You said it. When you were giving the introduction, you said it. That everything about the contract, any side that is maybe is at fault to be determined by court. So whatever you are putting into that contract and you are signing it, you have to make sure it is legal. Not that you just get up thinking you can just offer something or you can just accept anything. That at the end of the day, you are liable for any damage or whatever. It is the court that will determine whatever is due you. Thank you.
That's fine, Rosita.
Okay, so I will also talk about at my workplace, cocoa marketing. We normally do forward sales for the cocoa. So before a season will open, it's already been sold. And when these contracts are drawn, it all comes down to the risk management, because as we experienced earlier this year when the price of cocoa dropped, because we sold it at a previous price that was higher than when the beginning of the year it started dropping, we were able to mitigate that risk because the contract was already drawn and that price was sold. So the amount of tons that was sold at the time when the season began, we were able to sell it at that same price and reduce the risk. Without a contract, the remaining stock that were not sold, we still have a lot of stock at hand right now, which normally doesn't happen. But the contract that was drawn earlier in the season helped mitigate this. So I will also talk about the risk management aspect of contracts and how it helps institutions in times like this. Thank you.
Okay, that's also a good one. Okay, great. Okay, so contract management, let's zoom into some of the slides and see what we can also get out. But principally, all that you have mentioned are very, very key areas as part of the fundamentals, okay? Great. So we're going to look at contracts, principles, basics of contract management, forms and conditions, contract administration process, post-award and pre-award, monitoring contract performance, which is very key. We'll look at some modifications of contract, payment and cost controls, claims and dispute resolution, termination of contracts, contract records management, evaluation of contract performance. All these are very critical as far as managing all manner of contracts are concerned. So start by looking at what a contract is, not too different from what we have discussed. Okay, it has been defined as an agreement enforceable by law. That aspect is also very, very important. So upon what basis are you indeed making sure that these two parties who are more or less going to engage are indeed bound by some kind of a law? And typically, it is the law within the country. So if it is happening in Ghana, then we are talking about the laws of Ghana. However, in some contracts, you may have a clause that, okay, so if there's any dispute, we're going to go to some particular country to have that particular issue addressed in that country's court. In some instances, you can have such a clause within the contract. So here, saying that between two or more competent parties. Okay, when I say competent parties, we are looking at those who meet certain requirements. I think one of you said that you should be above 18 or so. That is indeed a requirement for Ghana, that at least this person, so if it's individuals, that's how come you're looking at it. But if it's organizational, then it means that the organization should have the requisite requirements that will enable it to be able to either be contracted or contract. Okay, and so to perform or not to perform. So it's either you're asking that party to perform a particular action or not to perform a particular action. Okay, and indeed, you look at specific acts. Okay, there has to be some specificities. That's why I said that contracts for goods may be different from contracts for services, because giving the KPIs may not be the same. Okay, so a contract may be written or oral, but as I've indicated already, for public and even some private organizations, just verbal may be injurious to both parties. Okay, it may be injurious to both parties. So, I mean, one should not joke with contracts. Okay, it has to be written, signed, and sealed, even if it's amongst two best friends or whatever. Anything can happen at any time, and that is why it's important that you indeed separate business from, kind of friendship arrangement. Okay, so a procurement contract, as far as the Public Procurement Act 2003 and amended is concerned, a procurement contract means a contract between the procurement entity and a supplier, contractor, or consultant resulting from some kind of procurement proceedings. Okay, so it means that there should have been some discussions and all for which a particular type of contract would have been agreed upon. Okay, so depending on what discussions have happened, it is upon that basis that a particular type of contract will be drafted for consideration. So there are some essential elements of a valid contract, okay? For a contract to be valid, it has to be legally enforceable, okay? And so these are what has to indeed be considered within a contract, which can be taken to court. Capacity to contract. The party to the contract must have the legal right, okay, to enter into the contract with respect to age, competency, and corporate authority. Has your organization been registered under the laws of the country, for which you can indeed enter into some kind of contractual agreement? Those who are indeed appending their signatures, do they have the requisite age requirement? Okay, if you think that you have the competencies, I mean, that one we'll say that it's a risk that could be borne by the buyer. But indeed, the buyer should also check whether indeed whoever the vendor is has the requisite competency to be able to deal with the matter. When it comes to certainty, the parties to the contract must be of the same mind about what is being offered and accepted. Thus, the essential term must be definite and agreed on by them. It has to be certain. Both of you should be able to read whatever the terms are to be able to understand, so that tomorrow you don't tell this was not shown to me, or this aspect I did not understand. You make sure you understand before you append your signature to that particular contract. I think someone also mentioned about consideration. The parties to the contract must each give something of legal value. So one is giving goods, one is also giving cash, okay, in return for the benefit he receives. Okay, so you receive goods and then the other party receives payment. And that is a very good and important aspect of, a valid contract. And again, the purpose for establishing such a contract has to be legitimate. It has to be legitimate. You don't come and contract a person that the person should get you cocaine or whatever it is. Okay, and even for certain drugs or medicines, there are specific guidelines guiding its acquisition from a particular vendor. Okay, so you don't get to, so that it doesn't end up in the hands of those who would go and abuse them and all that. Okay, so the object of the contract must not be one which is indeed an affront to the law or the law disapproves. Okay, the law will not enforce an illegal contract. Okay, that which is indeed against a public policy. Okay, so it means that either the products and service that you're dealing in, or you're having this contract, or this contract is all about, has to be of legitimate concern. Okay, possibility of performance. So a contract must be possible to perform. Okay, you need to be able to do it. It has to lend itself to it being able to be done. Right? So these are some of the essential elements of a contract. But indeed, if you want to form a contract, as I indicated, definitely it will emanate from the fact that there is a need on the part of the organization. And therefore, there's this thinking that once there is some form of a contract, it means that some propositions has been offered. Okay, if a proposal has been offered, it is up to the other party to read, look at it, and then also accept. If perchance there are disagreements in it, you put it forward, you put it across for those agreements to be more or less handled. If you are still not satisfied, you leave it. But if you are still interested, you go for it. So indeed, there has to be some kind of offer and acceptance in there. So in public procurement, the procurement entity usually takes the first step by inviting offers. Okay, because offers have to be more or less seen, especially in the newspapers or on organizational portals, etc. So there are various places that organizations will put their need, so that if a company wants to engage them, then of course A company can, sometimes it is in the newspapers. If you look in the newspapers, you see quite a bit of requests for quotation, requests for this, requests for that. And that is what I'm talking about. So interested contractors will then submit their bids, okay, to that company in what we call quotations. Okay, so some organizations will have them as tender documents. Others would indeed just send you a list, okay, depending on the quantum of products and services that are required, and also depending on the value that we are talking about. Okay, so indeed, you're given a particular deadline for which you are supposed to submit your quotations. If you're able to meet the deadline, fine. If you're not able to meet the deadline, fine as well. Because others would have been, so that's more like a competition. Okay, because others would have submitted. And so by that, it means that there are different types or ways of seeking to contract. Okay? Okay, so indeed, various procedures, somebody said SOPs, would have been stated as part of the consideration for the contract. So if those particular requirements are not met, there's no way one would indeed be able to attract that particular contract. So no tender may be withdrawn, substituted, or modified after the deadline for submission of those tenders. So once you submit your tenders, or once you submit your quotation, you can't take it back. You can't take it back and go and do any amendments. Okay. So then again, I think that Jude was talking about corruption. So Jude, you realize that, okay, so you submitted and all is through, everyone has submitted, and then somebody calls you backdoor. I've seen that Rosita's figures are A, B, and C, so take this, go and change it and then bring it back. So you go, you change it, and then you bring it back. I believe that that is corruption. Okay, that is corruption. Even though all the others may have their figures, which may be whether higher than yours or lower than yours, once that activity has happened, it makes it very, very bad and unethical. Okay, so that is indeed one aspect of the corruption bit that we're talking about. Okay, you have to also ensure that it's a clean acceptance, meaning that no reservations are attached. Acceptance is acceptance. Normally, we'll look at the procurement process, okay, where then the contract award and things comes in. Normally, once you have been notified, you have to accept. Okay, you have to accept unreservedly. Okay, so that it is unambiguous. Okay, unambiguous. All right. Okay. So again, there are a few things that you need to know with regards to the law applicable to a contract. As I indicated, it is important that you recognize where the authority for seeking justice will be done or is coming from. So no contract indeed exists in a void. Definitely national law must apply when there is a need. If there's also the need for some international laws to apply, that's it. That's fine. That is also a very good one. Okay. So if in some instances, certain entities may not trust a particular system and may want to use other laws to govern that. Now that's fine. Depends on what kind of contractual agreement is being considered anyway. So the applicable law is used by the judge or arbiter to interpret the contract and to fill in gaps in the contract where no contractual provisions actually exist. So it's important that all parties understand what law will be applicable to the contract. So again, the document forming various contracts, including works contracts, are indeed taken as mutually explanatory to one another, and for the purpose of interpretation, the composition and the priority of the document in many conditions are to be in accordance with the following consequence or the following sequence. So you see, for works, okay, works are very different from how, as I said, goods and services are adequately managed. Okay, so for example, there has to be some contract agreement, there has to be letter to agree, there has to be letter of the tender. Okay, particular conditions will have to be given, general conditions that will have to be given, specifications has to be in there, the various drawings and the various schedules and other documentation forming part of the contract has to be there. Sometimes when we talk about when audits has to happen, again, you can also have when monitoring and evaluation will have to happen. Sometimes all these things may be stipulated in the contract. When site visits and all will have to happen and all that will have to be part of the schedules. So as I indicated, that works contracts are quite unique. There are many, complex contracts that have happened over time, and making sure that these contracts are managed administratively sometimes can become a challenge, and so variety of works would mean that there would be differences as far as their complexities and the risks associated with them is concerned. So as I said, depends on how huge, what value, the various how magnanimous the project is would indeed require its commensurating risk portfolio. And therefore, smaller scale infrastructure projects will not indeed attract such. Okay, but it's important that all the essential elements are indeed seen. So that particular entity which wants to enter into the contractual agreements as far as works is concerned should have had some experience in that, because this is indeed a different ballgame altogether. It may not be the same. It is not the same as managing goods or as managing services. So some of the challenges that are posed here as far as works contract is concerned is with regards to large scale of material movement. Okay, large scale of material movement. So if you take a works project like the Pokwase in Sawam Road, you can imagine. Or you take the new one that is indeed coming up, the expressway from Accra to Kumasi. You can imagine the extent of work that has to be done on that highway. Okay, you're talking about almost 300-kilometer road, and it's not a small road, fresh road. And looking at the number of lanes that we are talking about, you can imagine. So indeed, some of these would require some excavations, earthworks, etc., and even people management and also it requires that proper due diligence is done. It's because there's wide variety of activities. Okay, the roads itself, the bridges, large structures, and all. Again, you can talk about how high technical complexity. So some of the projects are very, very complex, like the Tema motorway. Look at when it was done. And you realize that when we even wanted to maintain it, we were using bitumen instead of using a concrete. So now I don't even know what they're using to, pave or to actually form new lanes within the existing lanes. Okay, so a variety of resources are also required, the labor especially. The labor, those who can indeed have the competences and skills to be able to more or less do a very good job. Materials, incorporation of complex plans, equipment, materials, massive use of fuel, cars that has to be bought, etc., etc. All these are part of the challenges that indeed can happen because of the quantum of movement of goods, information, services, etc. One cannot take away the fact that expertise in various levels are concerned. I mentioned about those who can do the good job. So here I'm looking at probably a lower level, but there has to be the mid-level and then the top level. Very, very important. Very, very important. And because there are a number of employees, designers, contractors, and all, as I said, people management matter. Okay, so you can talk about those with HR expertise and all, managing some of these things, managing stakeholders as well. Okay, the contract manager, okay, or the project manager is supposed to be able to be grounded in managing various stakeholders with their various needs, because there can be insurers, there can be suppliers and manufacturers, etc. All of them coming into the fray. So when you get it right, then that's okay. But you do not get it right, then indeed there can be some potential impact, because economic value of that project to the economy is crucial, particularly when it is a major infrastructure work that has to happen within the locality for the labor market to enjoy, and also for various related services to be also considered. Again, there are social issues, especially so principally you can use the PESTEL model to analyze this these challenges. Okay, PESTEL, you look at the political, the economic, the socio-cultural, the technological, ecological, and then the legal. All these are very, very important areas that has to be considered when managing, especially a very huge project as has been considered. Okay. Okay, so each and every one of these contracts, these factors may and often have a direct impact on successful implementation of various contracts, and that is very, very legitimate. Okay, so for example, what has been the environmental study as far as the expressway is concerned? Okay, where will some water that has to be diverted past and all those? There has to be a comprehensive details of how the project is supposed to protect the environment is, because this day and age, every activity has to be, guided by such, because of the climate change issues that we are currently seeing. So there are types of works, okay? A type of work contracts. So there are indeed 4 main types of work contracts that the Public Procurement Authority or the Public Procurement Act is indeed looking at. Okay, so we have what we call the major works contract. Major works contract. Okay, so which has indeed an equivalent of 5 million Ghana cedi and above. Okay, so here it is important that these contracts be looked at from the general conditions of contract point of view. Very, very important. Okay, and indeed, the conditions of contract will also have to come in so that there can be a composite contractual agreement that is supposed to be considered. So these are indeed normally used only under if you talk about the Multilateral Development Bank, indeed harmonized edition of the International Federation of Consulting Engineers Conditions of Contract. That one is indeed being used when you're talking about international, some form of international contracting arrangement. Yes, so indeed, it's quite different from the national competitive tendering, as it were. Again, as we have major works contracts, which are supposed to indeed last 18 months, there is also the medium works contract. The medium works contract, where you are looking at between 50,000 and 5 million. Okay. In terms of the quantum of money that has to be spent, okay, or quantum of public funds that has to be spent within 8 months as well. Yeah, so this is very, very important. I want you to go and look at the multinational development bank as far as the International Federation of Consulting Engineers condition of contract is concerned, especially for specialized contracts. Kindly look at it. Okay. Kindly look at it. There are also minor work contracts, estimated to cost between 15,000 and 50,000. Okay, 15,000 and 50,000. All right. Again, these are more or less 4 months, and of course the rates are smaller compared to the others. Okay, and so it's important to also consider that. So with this, a particular feature of the tender document for the procurement of works, sometimes you have what you call the tender documents for procurement of works. It indicates that it's small contracts because of the monies involved. Okay, because of the monies involved. So usually you look at the national competitive tendering or the request for quotations because of the magnitude that are required. All right. Okay. Okay, so there are types of work contracts. We'll look at some of them. There are types of works. There are types of works. All right, so let's look at some of them, and I'm sure that you have come across a couple of them. So basic types of works, broadly defined and classified according to their methods of payment. Okay, they are varied sometimes due to, particular circumstances. Okay, and therefore, some may require some extensive documentations, okay, while others may not also require such. And so let's look at it from this method of payment point of view. The first one is lump sum. So I think that in our fundamentals, as we decided to look at contracts, I mentioned lump sum. Okay, so we also have the unit rate, and then cost reimbursable. Cost reimbursable. So when we talk about the lump sum, we are saying that a lump sum contract with activity schedules. It's more rarely used with the assumption of the risks of variation in quantities is minimal. But indeed, what is it with this particular lump sum is that once the contract is done, the lump sum of payment is done once and that is it. Okay. Sometimes you have the contract split into various milestones for which if a particular milestone is reached, then payment is made. Okay. So sometimes it is indeed divided that way. So for example, if you take a road project from Circle to, let's say, Circle to Nima, for example, as in Accra. Now, but I hope that as for Circle, everybody knows Circle. Okay, so for example, Circle to Nima. Okay, for Circle to Nima, that's it. Yeah, so if you get to, let's say, the ring road, how much is it going to cost? Okay, so they are put into phases more or less, and payment are indeed done accordingly. So lump sum or all-inclusive price contracts are normally used for small, short duration of 1 or 2 years. Okay, indeed, the very fine specifications has to be properly done. Okay, and so it becomes prudent that we look at it from that point of view. Okay, so smaller work contracts are used whenever this option is chosen because between 0 to 50,000 may not be that much, which would be difficult to raise. Okay. So indeed, when you talk about service contracts, that also has its own, its own line that we look at. Okay. In some instances, lump sum tenders may also be called for larger works, okay, of longer duration. Okay, so more or less, if you're looking at industrial process plants, because you're looking at it from the various stages point of view, you may want to also look at it from a different dimension. So here you realize that fixed price tender could be requested if payment is in a steady or a stable currency. In some instances, you realize that we may call it lump sum or fixed price. In some instances, that's how it is named because here, because you have it's for a short duration and all, there's no point in keeping anybody's money. So the price is fixed. Once it's supplied, immediately payments are effected. There are two adaptations of the fixed price as far as some of these contracts are concerned. Okay, and so it means that for those ones which price adjustment will have to be done, that is a risk to both parties. Okay, that is a risk to both parties. And that was what I think, was it Adobia who was asking about high risks and inflation and all? So here, all those components will have to be fused into the pricing so that one is adequately insulated from any price hikes or that particular kind of risk. And so it means that it is important to choose the type of contract, understand it properly before you enter into them. Now, when it comes to unit rate, so here you're talking about real measurements unit rate or contracts with bills of quantities and all. And here, those who have worked on some of these can come in and explain. Anybody who has worked with contracts that is characterized by bill of quantities or price schedules? Anybody? Unit rates. Oh, are you saying that nobody here? Yes. Where you have various quantities that you need match against prices and all that for the execution of works. Okay. Okay. So, I mean, unit rates is very common because it's what normally you have these artisans do for us when we want to probably do our tiling and all that. They normally use quote various rates for unit rates for materials and all, and then at the end of the day, sometimes they add their workmanship or something like that because they have the bills of quantities that is there, and they are expecting you to actually know what it is that they are indeed going to procure in order to execute that particular contract. Okay. So it's most common in general use internationally, especially for public sector construction works. Okay. And it normally could be used for both large and small projects. But of course, the risks associated with it have to be adequately managed because it may not be too straightforward to have that done. Sometimes tender prices would comprise the summation of the estimated quantities, multiplied by the unit rates that has been stipulated. Okay, so that you can have the full total that is supposed to be paid. So these are very simple ones that all of us, I'm sure that all of us normally utilize. There's also what we call the cost reimbursable contract. So now you have looked at lump sum or fixed price, you have looked at a unit rate, and then this one is cost reimbursable. Okay, cost reimbursable. All right. Now for cost reimbursable contracts, open under emergency situations such as structural collapse or damage or circumstances where works are exposed to certain conditions, okay, like wars, etc. When there's large unforeseen price fluctuations, again, when the private sector on a negotiation basis with a selected contractor is actually pushing for that, or in cases where an early start is required on projects which are not likely and adequately defined, may require that you use cost reimbursable. Okay, they are not too sure about design and all those things. You don't know what the end game could be. So all that, sometimes you may use the cost reimbursable as, as a means of assessing such works and then making sure that you are upbeat as far as the cost aspect is concerned. So contract types are chosen based on several factors. So from what we have discussed, what are some of the factors affecting the choice of contract type? Yes. Yes, Jude.
Yes, thank you, Doc. So some of the factors you would consider would be the cost element.
Okay, so you just name one and then you explain. You tell us why you think that is prudent.
Oh, okay. So, so for instance, we want to enter into a risk contract, and then let's say the amount is about 5 million. That is a major works contract. So with that one, the amount involved will mean that by the Procurement Act, you will have to use the international competitive tendering to attract bids or tenders from all over the world for such a contract.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so you are looking at it from the cost perspective. Okay, great. Any other? From what we have discussed. Amina, you were here. Is it Amina? Okay, Tony?
Look, I would also consider the level of risk. Look, most of the time, the party that bears the greater risk influences the contract time. For instance, high-risk projects where scope is unclear tend to favor contracts that share risk between buyer and then the supplier, such as the incentive for contracts. So the higher the buyer, the person that bears the risk, the party that bears the greater risk influences the contract. So
Okay.
that's my
Yeah.
view about it.
You are also looking at it from the risk bearing point of view. Okay, that's a good one. Yes, any other?
Doc, please, may I say something else? May I say something to add?
Yeah, sure.
One other thing too is that the duration of the contract also matters. For short-term engagements, may use simple purchase orders or spot contracts, while the long-term relationship require more comprehensive contract with review clauses and then renewal options.
Okay, so you're also saying that it will depend on it will depend on the renewal options that are available. Okay, all right. Yes, any other? Yes, Gabriella?
Though, can I also say the nature of the projects?
Exactly. Why not? Because the nature of the baby, you're talking about smaller, you remember we have spoken about smaller projects and then larger projects. And so the nature of, if you are going to build a cathedral for Ghana, the details and everything will be very different from going to build probably a small dam at Boleman Boy.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you. Yes, any other? You don't think that the people bit matter? Or the resources bit? Or it depends on what resources you have. Don't you think so? Don't you think so? That your resources, you want to build a road from here to Paga. And so you realize that the resources are not forthcoming. You want to probably cut them into smaller bits so that at every point in time you get money, you do so. So then that is influencing you to choose smaller project than what? The large project. All right. We've also talked about the definition of the project. Okay. How the project is defined. All right. If there's no clarity as far as the scope and its end dates is concerned, it will differ. For example, you want to develop a vaccine. This vaccine that you are developing, you don't know when you are going to complete it. Okay? And it's not too clear whether it will even work or not. And so that would influence the type of contract you may want to look at. so that you can look at cost reimbursable, so that if in, let's say, 10 days time, what has been done, you have a milestone, depending on what has been done, then payment is effected. Okay, yes, Tony?
I would also want to talk about the cost and then the budget certainty. Please, what this means is this explains how well the cost of the work can be predicted before the contract is signed. Let me give a scenario. For instance, if the buyer knows exactly what they want, and then the supplier can accurately estimate the total cost, then I believe a fixed price or the lump sum, as we discussed, is the best. So let's say you want to supply, want a supplier to deliver 500 bags of cement at 50 cedis each. The total cost is clear. That means 500 by 50 will run up to 25,000. So there is no surprises. A fixed contract is prepared here. It's perfect here. So the supplier agrees to deliver at that price no matter what. So the risk sits with the supplier. If the cost goes up, that's their problem, not the buyer. So when we know that we can estimate the total cost, then the fixed price is preferable. That's the lump sum.
Okay, very well. Very well, very well. Yes. Any other? Any other? Okay, so if there's none like that, then we may have to move on. But principally, it should be still thinking about some of the conditions under which a particular contract type is considered. Yes, Jude.
Yes, Doc, thank you. So, so far, what we have done, I am seeing works contracts that we are dealing with. So, once I hear the term a buyer and a supplier, I think under works contracts, we don't normally use those terms. We use those terms for goods in that regard. So, that is what I wanted to just chip in.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, so indeed, there are a few things that we may want to look out for, okay, when we want to engage in some particular types of works contracts, okay, works contracts. And as I've indicated, we are trying to center more on this because indeed we have so many contracts which is works oriented that is either does not see the light of day, is failing, etc., etc. So I mean, sometimes you may want to bow your head in shame because sometimes some of the things that you hear it becomes quite a daunting task. Becomes quite a daunting task. So let's see what some of these contracts can indeed be looked at. So a few of the more common adaptations and their particular uses. Sometimes you want to supply and erect, sometimes you want to design and build. There are 10 key projects. You may want to also look at some target costs. You also want to look at some PPPs so that indeed we can know the types of works contracts for some of the various projects and how They can be adapted or combined to suit particular contracting requirements, and even some payment provisions that we can consider, because some service level agreements could be in there. You can also find some particular, whether it's small projects or more or less project that has been delineated into smaller ones in there. So you can have all these various types of projects that can meet the requirements of works as it is. So when we look at, let's say, for example, the supply and erect projects, you realize that, Jude, I'll come back to you, okay? When you look at some of the supply and erect projects, you're looking at a type of contract that provides for the supply of major items of manufactured or pre-fabricated equipment or goods or what have you, okay, including relatively minor works involved in their erection and installation or commissioning, at various sites and all. Sometimes you may see, let's say, a mast, okay, where you may want to supply all the various components and then make sure it is adequately erected at some places. Sometimes the master, normally they sit on some particular legs. That legs or platforms that are created are all part of the works we are talking about. Okay, and so with such projects, you realize that there are areas that are minor and there are areas that are major. And so all those areas will have to be adequately considered. They will have to be adequately considered. Very well. So there could be major works, okay? There could be major works which may require some kind of commissioning and all, or some kind of testing for some of these works. Becomes very, very important that before these works are accepted, sometimes there has to be some form of training and all of those who are going to use the facility. Okay, if there has to be some training of trainers, then that indeed happens, because at the end of the day, you may not always want to go to the vendor, or you may not always want to go to the vendor to seek for, some kind of repairs and all. In some instances, you should be able to be in the position, especially when you have been trained, to be able to, exercise that particular aspect of activities. Okay, and so that becomes very prudent for such organizations to look at. When we talk about design and build, for example, okay, it's also a type of contract that is used for major buildings, okay? And then, of course, you have heavy infrastructure, okay, and requires that there are some particular people, or there are some particular employers, the employment of expertise with special technological skills, especially in this day and age. Okay, where buildings are some sophistications as far as technological infusion of technologies are concerned. Okay, and so you can have some areas where there can be even lifts and all those things. And you can have some other areas which may not also require certain security clearances before used and all that. So all these are very important areas that are considered in the life of in the life of this particular project. I'm told that there's time for a break, so do have your time for break. We'll talk, we'll continue after your break. All right. So see you after half an hour. Thank you.
I know. I'm the owner. This mansion was my wedding gift. 70 years and it's still feels like yesterday. Well, who might you through? Sidebar walked in. With a card of great grannies from the gal office. I heard your grandfather was ill. Please let me see him. Go home, kid. Get in the fire.
contract. I wanted to ask that in the process, when there is a variation in design change during execution, who bears the cost?
Okay, so you recognize that within the contract, there are clauses which you have read and signed against. So, for example, if you know that you anticipate that there are supposed to be some variations and all, there has to be some clarity with that one in the contract. That okay, so if there is a change in scope by A, B, and C, this will be the cost. Or there can be just a clause indicating that variations will come with its own associated costs, which would be more or less borne by or discussed by both parties. So some form of amicable agreement can be, realized, because projects typically do not go strictly according to plan. Definitely, there will be some form of change in scope. And so when it comes to that point, what is it in the contract that can take care of it? So both parties will have to look at it, especially when it comes to negotiation on the very fine details of what it is that is supposed to happen. Okay, so it is not a matter of who bears the cost, it is about what has been discussed and what is stipulated in the contract. So, for example, there's a portion within the project you delay as a contractor, and now there has to be some variation. Who caused it? So who should bear that cost? Are you getting me? So there are differences in how come a change will occur. And again, sometimes on the grounds, on paper, it may look different, but on the grounds, some variation will have to happen. It is about a discussion on the way forward with regards to that change in design. You get me? Are you with me?
Yes, sir.
So does that add to what you want to more or less realize with regards to your question?
Yes, please. I'm okay.
And
Thank you.
even in some instances, when it is, some are clear cut that, for example, with a unit rate like this, for example, you are supposed to more or less every trip of sand for filling a place, okay, for filling whatever, a hole. Maybe every trip of sand costs 10 cedis. You're supposed to go 20. Now you finish with the 20, it is not enough. Okay, 20 times 10 will give you 200 cedis. That's how much you have to be paid, and you are paid. That is still not, probably the whole may still require some. So you just, it is a matter of straight up adding some 2 or 3 so you can still earn 10 cedis more, which will be 10 by 3. That will be 30 Ghana cedis. So that is straightforward. Other than the cost reimbursable one, where at every point in time you are paid according to the works that has happened. Okay, every milestone that you reach, then there's some form of payment that is being made to the contractor. Okay, so these are what you can talk about. In some instances, with the cost reimbursable, in some instances, there's a fee. That's why we call cost and reimbursable fee. There's a fee that the contractor may have to add depending on the negotiation that had gone on. So when you get to that milestone, that cost is computed and added. It can be 10%, it can be 5%, but that cost will be added to as an incentive to the work that you have done. And it is pre-agreed. Sometimes it is pre-agreed, sometimes it is out of goodwill that a particular amount is paid. Sometimes it is negotiated for. Sometimes it's out of goodwill that the contractor would indeed be paid. Okay. Yeah, so before we left, we were looking at the design and build, okay, and we're saying that this type of contract involves, quite competitive designs, and it also involves, some kind of high level infrastructure and all that. And I was saying that in this day and age, some of this infrastructure comes with quite sophisticated technologies, and also it requires some contractors who are well versed in such engagement to actually start looking at it from that point of view. So there are competitive designs and all. There's also expression of interest for consultant services and pre-qualification for works, etc., etc. They are all essential features of the tender that is supposed to, be used as a form of engagement between the parties. Okay, and in this case, the tender evaluation would require that the designs that has been submitted are checked. It means that those on the panel should have the requisite competence to be able to check some of these designs and quantifications. Okay, so that one is not shortchanged. I bet that the amounts quoted by different entities will differ depending on how they want to go about the project and all, the timelines, payment schedules, etc. All that has to be assessed. Okay, and realize a very good construction work going on. So sometimes tenderers and applicants are sometimes compensated on a sliding scale according to merit for the preparation of responsive proposals, because it takes quite a bit of time to come up with some of these proposals. Okay, because you have to design, you have to make sure that all manner of, more or less, all manner of are put in so that indeed it can catch the eye of those who are evaluating. So a lot of energy goes into preparation of such contracts. So it falls in line. It's all good if they are somewhat compensated. Now, there's a few notes about 10 key. You hear of 10 key contracting. Indeed, it's used for procurement of complex industrial process facilities, food processors, petroleum refineries, etc., etc. These are very humongous projects. Okay, when alternative systems and processes could not provide satisfactory end product requirements. It would therefore be undesirable or impracticable to prepare definite designs and complete technical specifications in advance. So more or less, you start, you get it along, and then we see what the end actually would emerge, because it is more of a two-step tender procedure that normally happens. So the first step will be that, okay, so let's look at this. This is what we want, but we do not really have the design at hand. We do not know how to come up with whatever. So, various organizations are called in with those, especially those who matter, are called in to come up with the various designs and all. And that is the design that is evaluated. After that, that is when the bidding process actually would commence. So it presupposes that the two-stage, the first instance is to tell you, the second instance is to flow in for you to indeed bring up the detailed technical descriptions and proposals with the requisite prices to be brought to bear. Okay, so 10 key contractors actually undertake projects that are very detailed. especially when it comes to production process plants, okay, constructions that span a couple of years and all, and then looking at how it can be operated and maintenance, they are indeed handed over to the employer for him to indeed turn. So a turn key is to give the employer a key for the employer to actually turn it on more or less. Okay. So with this, normally you would have it in lump sum, okay? You would have such contract price in lump sum with periodic payment against specified stages, okay, until there's some form of completion. And that indeed helps to quickly recover, quickly recover their monies. Now, when it comes to PPPs, I'm sure that you've heard of PPPs. Okay, it's partnership between public and private sector for the purpose of delivering a project or a service traditionally provided by the public sector. So, for example, a road from Circle to Tesano is supposed to be done by government, but government can come together with GCT and decide to do the road, and then find a way of compensating GCTU for that. And typically, you see, GCTU is a public organization. So let's say when GCTU was a private organization, then that indeed would happen. But for public and public, it doesn't, because it's the same kitty that the money or the funds will be emanating from. Okay, so PPP have long-term contractual partnership between the public and the private sector agencies. Okay, especially targeted towards financing, design and implementing and operating infrastructure, facilities and services. That should have been indeed established by government. So let's say the expressway that is being constructed, if it is between, if, for example, government partners margins group, for example, margins group is a private entity, then they can come to agreement and see the proceeds that will come from the tolls that will be established. Probably they can calculate how long or how much will be collected per day, per week, per month, and all, and then decide on how they're going to go about it to recover their investment and all. So PPPs are good because it enables government to quickly tackle certain projects on time. And sometimes the combination makes it possible for the private sector, because they do not want to lose, to be very vigilant and be resilient in ensuring that the right things are done as far as procurement, as far as monitoring and evaluation. All these are done to make sure that the amount of funds allocated for that particular project stays just around the same. Okay, so that there's reduced corruption and its effect on the project. So there are quite a few models. Okay, there's service contract, management contract, joint venture, and partnerships. These are all, and then you could have lease contracts, which are also part of the types of contracts under the PPP models. I want you to go and look at them. Okay, go and look at this, because it is very important. It can happen between your organization and government. When it happens that way, what do you do? What do you know about it? Okay, so do well to look at the PPP models. There's also concessions and BOT. Okay, so various concessions and BOT are also very important. Okay, what we call build, operate, and transfer. Okay, so concessions make the private sector operator responsible for the full delivery of services in a specific area. Maybe it could be maintenance, it could be operations, etc. While the management and construction, as well as rehabilitation of the system, can also be done by a subcontractor sometimes. Okay, so, but all of it would indeed come from one company. Okay, but that company can also subcontract some others so that they can indeed have full concessions. They will be responsible for that full concessions. Okay. So the public sector, okay, which most of the time is government, will be responsible for establishing performance standards and ensuring that the questionnaire meets them. And in essence, the public sector's role shifts from being the service provider to regulating the price and quality of the service. Indeed, for build, operate, and transfer type of contract, it may be considered when the owner has limited budget. Of course, like government having limited budget for the construction of, let's say, the Pentagon as a hostel. Okay, so then there's some kind of agreement between a private sector, a private estate developer, and government. So when the building is done, then government will make sure that, okay, services rendered by this building is on point and all that until such a time when that particular project or entity is supposed to be transferred to the government. Okay. So arrangement with the BOs, arrangements are indeed similar to concessions and BOTs. Okay, the difference is that with the BOs, they do not have any limits on their duration, whereas with the BOTs, sometimes you can look at 20 to 30 years. Okay, so more or less, we are looking at privatization, okay, more or less privatization. And indeed, when you privatize a particular project, it presupposes that a lot more of the private sector funds has indeed gone in. And sometimes government may provide, just the land or something like that, but a lot more of the other aspects will be borne by the private sector. So for this, there can be, build, operate, and own. Okay, these type of partnerships, you realize that government agency, indeed, most of the time is not envisaged in this structure. Okay, and after some time, you realize that government may buy out or even terminate its obligations after some time because of probably the kind of results that they may be getting as a result of the BO. There's also design, build, finance, and operate. Okay, so the responsibilities for designing, building, financing, and operation are bundled together and transferred to private sector partners so that some of these partnerships realize that some companies would have their core competencies in various areas. Okay, core competencies in various areas, and they may want to really look at how best they can help in ensuring that some particular projects come to fruition. Okay, so build, operate, own, and transfer is also another aspect of this, and it's important that we get the various differences. So this is also something that you have to look at so that we indeed consider it in our next engagement. Okay, it is good that you evaluate 10 key projects, okay, in Ghana and compare the outcomes in terms of sustainable performance. So you are looking at how this helped the organization as far as the economic, the environmental, as well as the social aspect of sustainability is concerned. And these are very, very important because in every project, we have to have sustainable development thinking that should go with it. Okay. All right. Now, we may want to look at the basics of contract administration. Okay. So if you want to manage, and administer what we do, the role of contract management and administration, the benefits of managing or administering contracts, poor or fraudulent contract administration, remedial and proactive measures, policy on prevention, detection, and remediating fraud and corruption, main tasks associated with contract administration, and important parties in a works contract. So these are very, very important areas of managing contracts that we have to, more or less bear in mind. So we want to look at management of contracts made with suppliers, contractors, consultant, or technical service provided to assure that all the parties comply, with the provisions and fulfill the terms and conditions of the contract. Okay, so that is the import of the administration bit of contract. So you are dealing with parties to conform to time, to conform with specification, to conform with quality, such that payment can also be made at the right time, so that disputes are resolved adequately, KPIs are met, so that indeed the contract will be executed to the latter. So we are looking at procurement entities, ensuring that there is adequate performance, meeting the performance indicators by the supplier, contractor, consultant, or even the technical service provider. So indeed, each project can be looked at, or each contract can be considered a mini project, where there is proper M&E, monitoring and evaluation tools to check a few things, because of course you should have a goal for managing or administering such contract. You look at the resources, you look at the beginning and the end, and then you plan various activities that are supposed to ensure that all is well, throughout the process, that all is well. So contract management is commonly understood as the broader and more strategic concept that covers the whole procurement cycle, from planning all the way to the administrative activities of the procurement cycle. So you realize that for the procurement cycle, it indeed begins with the need, where there's adequate planning as far as the need is concerned, various specifications. You look at the market, how complex the market is, and then based on all that, you then decide on what type of procurement you may want to use, depending on the quantities, type, availability of product, etc., etc. So all these factors will build into the need. And then you look at the market, which suppliers are there. And so based on the supplier availability and all that, or complexity of the market, you may want to choose what type, as I said. Then you may want to also look at how best to source. So the process you go through has to be as ethical as possible, so that whoever emerges as the chosen organization, all and sundry, will be, will find that acceptable. And so it is after that, and award is indeed established, that contract administration then comes in. So contract administration comes in to look at how best to administer the contract, in terms of the KPIs and all those things that indeed would have to be fully considered by fully considered by the parties concerned. So if you compare the nature and characteristics of the activity associated with both contract management and contract administration, then we can see that the differences are indeed fundamental. Yet efficient contract administration would definitely require effective contract management, because if does not happen, if both parties do not think of what the strategic intent of that contract, then each party will just play just along. But when they realize that so there's a long-term thinking behind this particular contract that they indeed have, then of course administration becomes quite easier. So a few differences. You realize that contract management looks at relationship. That's what I'm talking about, long-term and strategic arena, whilst contract administration looks at the operational issues, governing its meeting KPI, making sure that you are here on time, blah, blah, blah. You supply on time, your personnel are professional, etc. All these are operational activities. Indeed, you also look at what? The process development. Instead of the short-term transactional activities, management looks at what? How best to look at it from the developmental point of view, which means that you're looking at the long term. Okay, it looks at the holistic aspect of the project. So you're managing the entirety of the project that you're looking at. But for administration, you're looking at just at the that particular contract. That's what the focus is. So it's more or less narrow as far as the view is concerned. Again, you realize that contract administration, you're looking at what? The key performance indicators, as I mentioned. But for contract management, the eye is on value. What value does all these contracts? It's not just about just one particular focus or operational focus, but the entirety of what is happening. How then does it indeed add value to the entire project at hand? Okay, so these are some of the differences, as it were. So the role of contract administration is to ensure that there is some planning done, there's some monitoring also, and then measurement of the various achievements. It's very, very important to measure. Anything that cannot be measured cannot be what? Improved. So you need to measure to know. That's why we have, it's important to look at various aspects of the process to make sure that they can adequately be measured. Okay, because to be able to go through all that would require that there's some form of multidisciplinary skills being exhibited, because you're dealing with people, you're dealing with materials, you're dealing with procedures, processes, etc. Until the product is even, if it's a product or if it's a collection of products, even storage alone, warehousing alone is a huge matter. So logistically, whoever is administering has to be on point until the completion of the project. And again, the legal issues regarding, how materials come in, how procurement is done, even to the extent that the disposal of product and service, the product that has indeed come in, would require that whoever is administering understands some of these. So it's very, very important that the role of contract administration is adequately cemented in the life of every project. So what would be the benefit of a good contract administration? Yes, what would be the benefit of a good contract administration? Yes, any hand up? Benefit of a good contract? Oh, I mean, this should be handy. Okay. Amazo, Jonathan, Ellie, contract properly administered. What is the benefit? You cannot.
Doc,
Yes.
reduction of cost
How?
in the sense that if you properly manage the contract well, sometimes deviations might come in. By an administration, you monitor the processes and make sure things are done in their right way so that there will not be any extra cost incurred along the execution of the contract.
Okay, that's fine. Yes, Gordon Buttrey. Gordon Buttrey, are you in class? You know you're in class. You should be somewhere that we can relate. Okay. All right. Mandy. Sigbe. Mandy, are you in class?
Yes, please.
Yes. Please tell us.
Please, I'm off small.
What
So I
do
didn't
you
get it.
Yeah, off small.
My
Okay.
net, it's
Jasmine,
raining, so
Fuseni.
network is up and down.
Okay. Jasmine Fuseni,
Dog,
tell
good
us
evening.
something. Yes.
Dog, to ensure smooth operation,
Okay.
goods
Yes.
and services are delivered as agreed.
Very well. So when there's proper and adequate contract management and administration, you have smooth sailing through as far as in acquisition of some of these contracts are concerned. All right, let's hear from Michael Sessi. Michael Sessi, are you in class? Michael Sessi. Okay, Michael Sessi is not in class. Okay, let's hear from Aladdin. Aladdin.
Yes, sir.
Talk to us.
Yeah, when contract is well managed, it helps to reduce legal liabilities.
Okay, so can you give an example?
Like maybe if the contract is not well managed, some of the contract terms may not be met, which can lead to a legal action against any of the partners who may be liable.
Oh, okay, that's great. Okay, so let's hear from Rosita. Where have you been?
Doc, I've been here.
Okay.
Properly administered contract, it helps improve performance and efficiency due to the monitoring. Due to the monitoring, everybody is monitored, so it ensures that everybody does what they are supposed to do, and performance is improved and efficient. Thank you.
Okay, that is great. Good one. Eliza. I see only Eliza. Your surname is not there. Who is Eliza?
Sir,
Who are you?
sir, please, I'm your student.
So what's your full name?
Eliza Dude.
Yeah, so next time, please add your dude so that. Okay, yes. What have you got to say? Hello? Okay, looks like Eliza has nothing to tell us. Okay, Gabriela, talk to us.
Okay, Doc, please, what about promote good relationships? The
Yes,
benefits.
yes. I mean,
Like good
relationship.
communication and fairness during contract administration strengthens the relationship between the buyer and then the supplier.
Yes, so relationship is very important.
Yes, and then it also reduces risk.
How?
So it helps identify and then manage the risk earlier before the thing is being implemented.
So early detection of risk. Okay. Okay, Jude, do you have something to add or say?
Yes, that explanation you've given us so far, I believe that good contract administration can also reduce project delays. That is when you identify the problems earlier, you can easily correct it as and when the project goes on.
Okay. Okay. All right. Okay. Great. Delays. Tony.
Yeah, thank you very much, Doc.
Yeah.
We discussed about contract administration as looking into the operational side.
Yeah.
And then we talk about monitoring and evaluation here. So one of the benefits is that it helps to monitors the supplier or the contractor performance. So through regular reviews and then the key performance indicators, that's the KPIs, it keeps suppliers accountable and ensures they are delivering to the agreed standard. And then also timeline and specifications. So, Doc, to look at the monitoring side, um, they will be looking at tracking the contract activities to ensure that all parties are performing the obligation as agreed in the contract. So it is an ongoing, it's a real-time process that happens throughout the life of the contract. And then what evaluation will do is that they'll be tracking the overall performance of the contracts to determine whether it is achieving its intended objectives and delivering value. So these are some of the benefits of the contract administration. Thank you very much.
Very well. Very well. Great. A good one. So, okay. Okay. I can see. So before Adepa and Bonnie come in, Daniel, I saw your hand up. Adinote.
Yes, Doc. I wanted to say that it helps solve challenges and problems faster because once they are identified in time, it helps solve them. And also, it also helps to negotiate in negotiation when there are issues of one way or the other. Should I say non-conformance or non-performance of a specific aspect of the contract? It helps the two parties involved to be able to renegotiate faster, and also the it gives you the ability to get a good form of compliance because when there is contract administration, the other party knows or those who are involved know that someone is watching. So it helps the person to be on track to be able to conform and comply to what is needed. And also when it comes to auditing, because there is administration of the contract, it prevents uh, unnecessary uh, deviations from the actual work, which helps or the audit section of the whole project to be easily done. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's also a very good one. With regards to ensuring that there's adequate auditing and all that. Because you have indeed properly managed and administered, sometimes it even makes auditing quite easier because you'll be going strictly according to the laid down procedures and processes. Adobia and Rosemary. No, is it Rosemary or Bonnie? Rebecca? Yeah.
Doc, please, you mentioned my name.
No, let's Adobia speaks and Bonnie will speak. And then you may come in.
Okay, Doc. So I wanted to say that it also prevents disputes and penalties because both parties are ensuring that they fulfill their terms of the contract. And so there is no need for dispute to arise. And then it also reduces legal issues and fines and all the charges and all that. Thank you.
Because more or less you are almost always operating on the same page.
Yes.
This brings in some adequacy as far as communication is also concerned, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Very well, Adobia. Yes, Bonnie.
Okay, so, I also want to say that it ensures that the supplier gets the value of the money that the buyer gets the value of the money he's spending. So because there is monitoring, the supplier delivers exactly what the buyer wants. So it gives you value for your money.
Okay, so value for money is assured.
I also want to ask a question. So my question is, in an instance where it's not stated in the contract, the penalty should one party not go by what is stated in the contract. For instance, the supplier is not able to supply the exact quality of products the buyer wants, but it's not stated in the contract the penalty for not doing so. Who gives out what punishment or what penalty should be meted out?
Come again.
In an instance where it's not stated in the contract, should one party not supply or not comply with what is stated in the contract? For instance, the supplier didn't supply the right quality of product. That means the supplier has violated the contract, but it's not stated what punishment or penalty should be meted out to the supplier. Who dictates what punishment should be?
So a contract is a contract when it is enforceable by law. So definitely there's an arbiter in there. And for most contracts, depending on the kind of more or less project you are talking about, most contracts are governed. There is something in there, okay, but when it comes to disputes, so we'll come to that because there are some provisions like there are some provisions that for some contract has to be in there. So for example, dispute resolution, it has to be in every contract. Every contract you need to have it there because you never know when a dispute will arise. So why is it not in there? If it arises, what happens? You can put in that there can be an ADR happening, or you strictly go to court, or you have to go to an international court or something. It has to be in there. Okay, so it's not a matter of who, but it's not in there. Well, unless, of course, a contract that is poorly done. But for a public contract, it has to be there.
Okay, sir.
It has to be there. So we know what the consequences are if you supply poor quality products and it's not fit for purpose. Who wants that? Okay, who wants that? So it requires that there's adequate monitoring and evaluation so that you can spot some of these things. Okay. Is that okay?
Okay, sir, I'm okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, any other questions, please? All right, so if there are no questions, let's move on. Let's see the benefit, okay, now we've looked at the benefits. There's clear and documentation records, compliance is there, value for money is there, performance rating could be high. All this has been management of change is also something that can easily be conducted or can be achieved because of the various systems and processes that you have put in place. So there can be poor and fraudulent contract administration. Okay. What happens? Yeah, Jude.
Yeah, sir, thank you. So please, I wanted to ask a question.
Please go ahead.
Okay. Sir, please, to what extent can poor contract administration lead to project failure, even if the contract terms are clear?
Contract terms are clear. However, there is a gap, and therefore the contract has delayed. Right? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I wanted to know, even if the contract terms are clear, to what extent can we say that this contract is poor, this contract administration is poor?
Oh, the terms are clear that these are your KPIs. Supply at 2 p.m. to Kwesimentim Hospital. Supply paracetamol syrup, 10 cartons. Supply paracetamol, let's say, which other one comes to mind? You have paracetamol, 10 cartons. You have, let's say, what else?
Cotton roll.
Cotton wool, yes, a box of cotton wool and another 10 boxes of gauze. Now you decide to bring half of each of them. And on your invoice, you have written the full quantities. And then you have given a total of the full quantities. Okay, and then you bring it in a poor, quality van, which looks shambolic. You're not meeting the KPIs, even though it's spelled out clearly in your contract that this and this and this is what you're supposed to do. So what will happen to the whole process? You are just indeed creating mayhem. Okay, because you know that drugs require some particular type of temperature before it gets to and some particular type of temperature or environment before it gets to the end user or the buyer. Okay, and so if you're not conforming, what are you doing? So who should give you a contract the next time? Or what should be done to you in your post-contract discussions? Or as part of the M&E or auditing, what should be done? The goods can be even be rejected. Or they ask you, go drop this, go change the invoice, or take everything away and come with everything afresh, which will show the full complement of what you are indeed supposed to supply. That's what has to happen. Okay?
Okay.
So terms may be clear and all that, but I mean, the party has to be responsible for what has been stipulated clearly in the contract. Yes, Ejako.
Doc, so in this case, you've been given an award to supply, let's say, cotton wool and then gauze roll. Then you do your supplies just as the contract stated, maybe 10 boxes each. Now you get to the facility where you will deliver, and then the receivers at the store tells you that, oh, no, this one, we can't take all. We can only take, let's say, 5 of gauze, 8 of the cotton wool, because we have enough in stock. And then you try to tell them that, but this is a contract that has been signed by your superiors and what have you. There's a legal document that shows this. So I can't, my way bill, my VAT invoice, everything is done. And the product, as stated on the award, is here. Then now the stores decide to take some and then leave some. In this way, what do you do?
So there's a missing link between the store and administration. Administration, I mean the store procurement and finance, and even the audit. There's a missing link. You, the store or the warehouse, you should be able to feed, okay? Or even the users, the user department, okay, and all that. You should know the quantities that are there. Indeed, it is the stores that tells procurement that, okay, we are short of this, and so we need A, B, and C. So sometimes it beats my imagination that procurement will order more than what the stores can indeed store, or the warehouse can indeed take. How can that be? It doesn't make sense. Okay, unless there's something fictitious going on, I don't get it. The store, the warehouse, you are storing. The last time orders came, it was 10 cartons. 10 cartons are, and you know the periodic usage. And so you know the period within which the product would reach the economic order quantities. And therefore you trigger what? The process. Apart from you probably having consistent quantities that you may want to pick at every point in time, maybe you are using another strategy where you wait till it gets to a particular level and you then decide the quantities. Every warehouse have their own way of going about this. Okay, so then you trigger the process that you need A, B, and C. It goes to procurement. Procurement then puts it through the supplier supplies. So where lies the I don't have space? Because you decide, unless somebody else, because I know some companies where HR can just sit there and then decide the quantities that should be procured and all those things. Throwing away all the processes that are supposed to streamline the system. Okay, sometimes these things, they happen in very horrendous environments. And if you tell you that this organization, this is what is happening there, you will not believe it. But that is what is happening. So it needs to be considered.
Yes.
Yes, any other questions, please? Okay, so now let's look at poor and fraudulent contract administration, poor capacity. Okay, so you realize that this person came to pass through. Sometimes somebody may have sometimes they may not have the requisite capacity. You realize that this person deals in rice and comes to quote for school uniforms. So then at the end of the day, you realize that they do not have the capacity to supply. And this happens when it is sometimes politically tainted and all those things. Give the person any contract, anything, those things. So sometimes there's lack of willingness to more or less be assertive as far as the administration bit is concerned. They don't care. Okay, they don't care. Whatever it is, bring it. Especially when some things are dished out, they don't care. Don't care about quality, they don't care anything. Just bring it and then keep it in their stores. Payment delays, as someone said, yes, of course. Payment delays can be indeed hamper the proper administration of the contract. And the scope of contract is not achieved as works are not completed. Of course, when that happens, then it becomes quite difficult to even quantify the extent. But it is good that these days you hear that for the road project, they ask you, what level have you reached? What percentage have you done? Okay, and that means that there's an M&E system there, which is telling us that when you do A, B, C, D, that is 10%. When you do B, C, D, F, that's 20%. That's wonderful. So sometimes you have to listen to the roads minister. I think that the way he is going about his duties is indeed commendable. Unjustified variations, yes, can cause, you are the project sponsor. Okay, and so if you want a particular change, it goes with, monetary commitments or funds. So it has to be considered. Contract specifications are not met with poor quality of work and all that. Definitely, it will affect the administration. Products are substituted by inferior. That thing where there's some collusion between the warehouse and the private supplier. These things happens, and it is indeed fraudulent. But I dare say that when you decide to allow substandard syringes to be more or less accepted into the hospital, and you are sick, it is there that sometimes when you are sick, that same hospital, emergency, they will put you in that same hospital, and they use that syringe with crooked tip to pierce through your body so that you also feel that, yes, this is what other patients are feeling. Very bad, sometimes very bad people within the chain do these things. Yeah. So remedial and proactive actions. What should we do? We should maintain close control. Okay. Maintain close control on the project manager or engineer. Okay. So should we check site visit, unannounced site visits? Okay, unannounced site visits. And with this, I will urge you to be listening to PAC. Okay, Public Account Committee, and get to understand some of these things. Why some people behave the way they behave. Sometimes it's just horrible. Sometimes just one has been moved from, I listened to one, he's been moved from the Ministry of Defense to the Ministry of Lands and Forestry. Can you imagine? And he has just messed up. He's messed up at Ministry of Defense. Defense. Where you have soldiers. Hey. Then you have pushed him into, you say you are making changes, then you put him into Lands and Forestry. Country. So, anyway. So, yeah, so you do some form of inspections and all that, logbooks, etc., to ensure that all these things happen. Okay, so the person providing the payment should not be involved in the verification of payment documents and all. Okay, that's also good to curb, some corruption issues here and there. Internal audit is indeed important. When goods arrive, you have to get an internal audit person to check with a finance. The team has to be there to check when products are received to ensure that everyone plays their role adequately. So policy in preventing, detection, and remediating fraud and corruption. Coercive practices have to be there. Collusive practices, corrupt practices, fraudulent practices, all these are things that are normally done. So what is coercive practice? Meaning impairing or harming or threatening to impair or harm, directly and indirectly, any party or property of any party to influence the actions of a party in connection with the implementation of any contract supported in whole or part, including such actions taken in connection with the execution of the contract. Some people can be coerced. Sometimes some bosses can take, if you don't do this, then I'll fire you, or you'll be fired or something like that. I know that in private sector oriented organization, it can be a daunting task, okay, to refuse. And in the public sector, sometimes people are vigilant, tell you that, okay, then send a mail so that I have records to show that you said that. Yes, I've seen some before, but this was in private sector where, those people were sacked. So boss says do A, B, C, D. And, you just quickly went to do it without saying anything. Well, I knew that what you were doing was indeed not right. So what happened? And at the end of the day, the boss said he didn't instruct, so they were fired. So some of these things you should be well aware. Open your eyes, ears, every sense that you have, sense organ that you have, widely open, so that you can be able to get away with some of these things. Collusive practices, okay, explicit agreement between two or more parties to perform corrupt activities, okay? There's also corrupt practice, okay? That was why I was asking you, what was corruption, okay? Corrupt practices, what are they? Okay, offering, giving, receiving, soliciting, directing, and all those things to influence the actions of a public official, employee, etc., so that they can indeed more or less twist the contract execution or making of any payment to any third party in connection with the contract. Okay, so all these things are very, very important that you look at them. Fraudulent practices, you intentionally omit, or as I discussed earlier, all bids have come, you take one, give it to the other party to change prices and bring it. All these are fraudulent activities. Okay, that has to be adequately looked at. Sorry. So there's also obstructive practice. Okay, obstructive practice or acts taken in connection with the implementation of any contract supported in whole. So what do? You either destroy, falsify, or alter evidence. You also threaten and harass parties. Okay, you impede the conduct of an inspection. So, for example, goods have arrived. And all the time, all of them are going to check it. They say no, all of them should go back. And then you and maybe the warehouse man, they are going to check. Very fine case. Okay, very fine case. Okay, trafficking and all those things are also, prohibited practices are also there, like anti-money laundering, etc., etc. All these are corrupt practices that has to be nipped in the bud. So it is a summary of main tasks of contract administration, which I believe you can look at. Any question so far? So contract administration, you need to plan, you need to look at policies and systems and procedures so that you realize all procedures are followed through and through. Monitor contract performance and report. Reporting is so key. So key. Reporting is key because indeed, when reports are read, then if there are remedial actions that has to be taken, they are taken. If things has to be returned, if suppliers will have to be contacted, so they actually stick to timelines, stick to performance, stick to quality, then that is done. Okay. Yes, Ejaku.
Look, thank you. So over time, I noticed one thing. I don't know if it is sheer irresponsibility or greed, or probably, for the want of a better word, to say that if they are only interested in themselves. With reference to some procurement managers, you realize that you try and then you register with their facility so that you could do business with them. You submit all your documents, you do everything, you are on point. You try to follow up just to see the way forward. Tenders will go on, requests for quotations, and every other thing will go on. But at the end of the day, you will not be contacted. But you follow up, and then probably if you get to know someone in there who you use to follow up, you get to realize that the contract is being awarded to the same people that they know. And in this case, they have their people that they bring on board, and they award the same contracts to them, thereby not giving opportunities for even newcomers to come. But then when it happens that this facility, they delay in paying their suppliers, then when a new supplier comes in, they quickly move to that supplier because they know that, oh, we have a backlog of suppliers that we have not paid. So probably they are getting tired of us. So once this new supplier is in, let us ride on this horse and then also continue that process. We owe them. When you talk to them, they tell you, oh, it is not us, so NHIS is a facility. Sometimes even the procurement managers go a long way to try and negotiate with their suppliers. So that, I mean, this kind of fraudulent activity. So I ask, is it because they don't know, or it is just that they have made up their mind that no matter what happens, they are going to corrupt the system, thereby trying to make other people feel very, very uncomfortable? I just I just want to have a take on that.
This matter. This matter.
So it's true.
Oh, I'm not saying it's not true. I'm just saying that, so sometimes, okay, when lower level managers behave this way, you wonder what the top management is doing. That's all I can say. It's either they are accomplices or they don't know their work or they've decided to just look the other way. That's all I can say. Because this thing that is happening, they have their bosses. Sometimes you report to the boss will do nothing. That's all. And the status quo continues. Yes, the status quo continues. Very sad story. Very sad story. And it may not only be happening in one place. Yeah. Because, people have to be responsible and make sure that the system is working. Unfortunately, sometimes you find out that those who you think should even be, protecting the system, make sure things are happening, they may be directly involved. They may be turning the key like 10 key contracts. Okay, yeah, so that's what typically happens. Okay. It is understandable that, if you're managing an organization, you can't see everywhere, know everything. But some of these things can be pervasive. You realize this is continuous, perpetuating, that nobody is doing nothing about it. So you have to go and plead for your check, which has been there. You've supplied some stuff for a very long time. There's no payment. Yes, Jude.
Yes, Doc, thank you very much. So, with regards to what my colleague Isaac is saying, Doc, there is a challenge in the system because of, let's say, the public sector. An organization will have about 400 suppliers on their list. 400. Me, I have more than 400. And you want to do a tendering. If it's a national tendering, that is where we advise that even if you are registered with the institution, take part. That one there is free for all. Take part. Maybe through that you may penetrate. And if it comes to the price quotation, that small one, 3 invoice, 6, you can invite all 400 companies. So I also realize most companies are also doing the same thing. In Ghana here, you realize majority of the companies are doing the same thing. It makes it difficult for you to penetrate, but occasionally some of them are able to go through. So it's not all the time that it's about corruption, but sometimes the reality on the ground, it's not easy to just get you through like that. That's why it's imperative on the companies to look in the daily graphic and co and try to get into the national competitive tendering. By that, nobody can prevent you from participating. Thank you, Doc.
Advice well taken. I'm sure that your other colleagues who are in that find themselves in that space will also probably look at it. But when it comes to contracting, procurement, negotiations, and its associated, I will call all that the corruption, coercion, and all that. I'll call it associated encumbrances. It is quite horrendous on many occasions you can't imagine what happens. Yeah, you can't imagine. There are so many gaps that are created by human beings, and it's about time people are brought to book appropriately, okay, so that they can answer. Because through these, the kind of money that are thrown away, serious canker that is eating up our meager resources. So these are some of the tasks that are associated with contract administration. Any questions with any of them? one area that I dare say that, can be very important is the managing contract records. Sometimes all you hear is that, the records room has been bent. Dear. So, I mean, records keeping is very, very key, and it is important that in this day and age, I mean, a lot of papers does not really make meaning. Okay, we need to try and then use technology to influence how we store, how we keep records. Okay, so if we are still using hard drives and, how do you call it? The organizations sometimes laptop and, no. How about if the laptop gets stolen and all that, then people start running helter-skelter. It doesn't wash. Let us use some of these 21st century, storage systems which can stand the test of time and have the security measures put on them so that it becomes very difficult to penetrate and all that. I think that other organizations are using them, and they are reaping the requisite results. So we should also, look at how best we can, keep records in systems which can easily be retrieved and disseminated easily, than to continuously be looking at, okay, the stores is spent. Then it's like, how? Without the source document, there's nowhere to find anything again. No.
That's Ghana for you.
Although that's not Ghana for us. I mean, we can always improve. Okay, we can always improve.
Sometimes I get so surprised why only the records section mostly gets bent.
You may have to ask Jude about that. He was laughing, so maybe he has a clue. You ask him after class. All right, so let's see. Important parties in works contract. Who are they? Okay, who are the important parties in works contracts? Okay, you can look at the employer, you can look at engineers, you can look at the contractors. The employer, indeed, most of the time you can see that it's the government of Ghana when it is indeed a public, let's say if it's a road, the employer is the government of Ghana. Okay, and it's important that the employer knows what to do. Okay, and knowing what to request from the engineer, knowing what to do by themselves, when to pay and all those things, they are all very, very important. And when to even do an M&E, it means that whoever is the employer should be able to have an itinerary. Okay, they can even have their own dashboard, M&E dashboard. Okay, apart from the one that is in the office or something. And indeed, devise a means of getting to know what exactly is going on at every point in time. Okay, so that you are seized, because in our environment, without monitoring and evaluation, there's nothing that can be done. They will take some pictures and come and show you, and you'll be clapping. Meanwhile, on the ground, it will be zero. So these parties are very important. Engineer is also very important. Okay, in a very strict understanding of conditions of contract, the engineer is a person. It should be, ensured that he or she knows their own roles and responsibilities as assiduously as possible. Okay, because that engineer will mobilize all the technical recruitment and people with the requisite expertise when it comes to quality assurance, hydrological engineers, environmental specialists, put all of them together to make sure that that consortium that is formed, each one of them, okay, play their role as it fits, so that the entire whole can can work together to meet the objective of the work at hand or the project. So yeah, the contractor is the main guy, okay, responsible for the day-to-day oversight of the construction site, manage vendors and communicate to involve parties and all that. Okay, so the contractor is responsible for the overall coordination of the various projects, and indeed must be able to have access to tender documents and all, so that they can indeed know exactly what to expect, what the expectations are, so that they can work as expected. Then when it comes to especially specifications and all, the contractor is supposed to make sure that all are indeed on point. Yeah, so any questions so far? Any questions so far? I think we've had quite a good discussion on contracts, contract management, and all. Yeah. Any questions so far? Okay, so there are a few things in there that I've asked you to look at. Make sure that you do that. I would indeed send the slides to your course rep. And I think that, this particular aspect of the work is quite loaded, and there's a lot that you need to also know, okay? But indeed, with contract management, it's important that you read quite a bit of things on your own, okay? Especially because this that we are doing is part of a broader supply chain, okay? And again, some aspects principally falls under procurement. And it is indeed important that you understand the procurement cycle. You realize where I started from. Indeed, I've talked about even the cycle today. So it is important that you understand the cycle so that you can spot the various gaps right from the sourcing bit. Okay, because you see, we have talked about creating a contract. If you want to create a contract, start with what you need. That is, the need will tell you what type of contract you should have, what method of procurement you should use, and all that. So the need is important. And so it's important you understand the procurement cycle. If you understand the procurement cycle, look for gaps that you have seen or heard in the public space, and then think of how you can avert them. Are you getting my point? That will give you a very broad view, and all these contracts and its contract administration, management, corruption, and all those things. You have a very vivid view of how to spot some of these things and how to avert them. It is very important that you look at it from that point of view. When you come from that point of view, you realize that all will be well and great. So look for the procurement cycle and then spot the various gaps from sourcing through the execution and even the closure. And then we see how best to avert the various issues that are in there. Is that okay? Nobody is
Yes, Doc.
responding.
Yes, Doc.
Yes, sir.
Yes, Doc.
Yeah, so I think that on that note, I think this half an hour, use it to think about how you can go about it. Whilst I decide on grouping you guys to look at it. I think it's very important that we look at it. Okay, so we can't use the first grouping, I'll pass on the new group to your course rep so that you can work together with different people and know how difficult it is to deal with some people like Judas Yedu, Jutufo, Stephen Tete, Daniel. I know a lot of people who are very difficult to work with. So I want you to be working with them.
We beg.
Yes. Adobia and Co. Very difficult people to work with. Frankie Sophie. So that when I mix you like that, then you can be able to cope with all of them. Any final questions, please? That's just by the way, though. Yeah. Any final questions? What's in the chat? What about me? Yes, Tony, you're also a very difficult person. Okay, so yes, any final thoughts? Okay, so on that note, thank you very much for coming to class. Course rep, you're 26. Some did not come. Let me know the reason why they did not come before I give them 0. Okay, so I wish you all the best and have a nice time. Bye.
Bye, Doc. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you, Doc.
Yeah.
Bye, Doc.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Bye.
Judas Yedu. Mr. Yedu.
Yes.
Mr. Yedu, good evening.
Good evening.
Oh, please, how have you been?
By God's grace, here and
It's backdoor. Why? It's being recorded. Why? Backdoor.
Oh, we are about to tell you out.